again, it's your boy, the best artifact player in the world, Ekop, here to bring you my top 10 blue heroes in Artifact Draft. Let's get this list started. Tied for number 10 are the 3 heroes that are worse options than the basic blue hero that you always have access to. Outworld Devourer is the worst of them. This hero has literally nothing significant to offer besides a cool name. His ability is strictly worse than the one of Crystal Maiden, and his stats are average for a blue hero, but that's obviously not enough to make him worth playing. And his signature card, while being a better silence card than the one of Bloodseeker or Rix, is still a situational card that isn't really impactful. Meepo. Man, this guy was meant to be a meme hero from the start, right? So obviously his power level matches that design philosophy. His stats are so weak that the fact that you can have multiple Meepos becomes an upside for your opponent rather than you, since he gets double or even triple the gold when he kills one of them, since all Meepos die whenever one dies. The only time this hero is okay is if you have ways to dodge enemy hero attacks and them not having removal. So basically, versus a red-green deck is maybe where he shines the most. Once you have access to multiple Meepos against those kind of decks, you can win these lanes pretty quickly thanks to using his 2 damage AoE multiple times. But this rarely ever happens, and therefore Meepo is a hard pass for me. Crystal Maiden would be close to being a decent hero if it wasn't for those atrocious stats. Her passive is quite good if you end up having a spell-heavy deck, especially when it involves a bunch of cunning plans that you can cast for free. And Frostbite provides the same kind of utility, if not better, than Jamui's signature card. But these stats though, no thanks. At number 9 we got our basic blue boy, Jamui. His stats are surprisingly good compared to other blue heroes considering he's a basic hero, but that's exactly what he needs to mitigate the fact that his signature card is so underwhelming. Sure, it has its uses of course, since it protects your squishy blue heroes quite well most of the time, and even has some offensive capabilities too. But I'd much rather play Compel or Cunning Plan in order to do that. At least his active can draw you a card every 4 turns, which is a sweet bonus, but nothing that makes him worth more than the upcoming entries in this list. The number 8 spot goes to Venomancer. Venomancer doesn't seem like much at first, with his weak stats and even weaker stats of the creeps he spawns with his passive or signature card. However, as you would expect from anyone using Venom as a weapon of choice, it's quite deceptive, and the advantage you get out of them kind of creeps up on you out of nowhere. Thanks to the 2 piercing damage these plague wards shoot every turn, if they go uncontested, those wards can win a lane just by themselves, especially if their number grows and they don't immediately get handled. The problem with that, it might take a while until the plague wards secure you the win on a lane. And even then you can't capitalize off of that since they deal almost no structure damage, unless you have some kind of cards that can buff them. So your opponent can just concentrate on winning the other lanes before your plague wards are even able to destroy the tower on the lane they won. Remember to also deploy him on turn 2 in order to maximize the chance that he doesn't die immediately and is able to spawn as many wards as possible. Coming in at number 7 is Earthshaker. He comes with 2 insanely impactful but also insanely situational tools. His active, that you can activate every 4 turns, is very dependent on his positioning. You can look out your opponent's entire turn by stunning all their heroes, but if he's out of position, however, he becomes kind of worthless. His Echo Slam is similar in that way. If you are able to use it in a lane with a lot of stuff on the enemy's side, it often becomes a one-sided annihilation, which is insane. Absolutely worthless, however, if there's only 1 to 2 heroes and no creeps on the opponent's side. So in order to maximize the potential of Echo Slam, you should have at least 2 blue heroes in your lineup, preferably 3, so you always hit the lane with Echo Slam that you actually want. If his tools were less situational, this hero would easily be higher up the rankings, but as things are, it's only enough for number 7. The number 6 spot is taken by Skywrath Mage. I can't believe I would see a card that's both flexible and situational at the same time, but that's exactly what his signature card, Mystic Flare, is. It allows you to clear boards of small things standing in the way of your tower push. You can one-shot almost any isolated hero that stands in your way. Sometimes you even get to kill more than one hero, if they are next to each other. The problem of course is that sometimes just one errant melee creep can totally ruin your plan of the perfect flare. Sure, his active concussive blasts can give you a higher chance of setting up a good Mystic Flare, but using it gives your opponent the chance to react to it appropriately and get his stuff out of range. Even so, it's still a hero that provides your deck with a powerful card and useful active ability that also improves a lot of other blue spells you might have access to. Make sure to deploy him on turn 3 so you can immediately use his active if you need it, or set it up in a lane where he's safe so you can ensure he's able to cast Mystic Flare the turn after. The number 5 spot belongs to Prelex. Prelex is very similar to Venomancer in terms of stats and board presence she provides with her passive. You can argue that the plague boards that Venomancer provides are better than just the basic melee creeps that Prelex gives you, but what puts her over the top is her signature card Barracks. Depending on what kind of deck you play against, Barracks alone can be enough to lock down a lane even without having a hero in that lane. Especially red decks, which typically struggle against white boards, have a hard time against Barracks when their heroes are constantly forced to smash into a melee creep, and that kind of utility Venomancer just doesn't provide unless he is in that specific lane himself. At number 4 we have Ogre Magi. Besides the fun factor that the passive multicast provides, which arguably can be powerful enough to somewhat build your deck around it, the true reason to play this guy is his signature card, Ignite. As you might already know, cards like Conflagration can win you lanes on their own, and while Ignite doesn't deal as much damage as Conflagration does, it potentially comes down 2 turns earlier, and being able to set up upkeep kills for such a low amount of mana is just always valuable in general, and your opponent will always have to keep in mind to not leave his heroes at 1 HP to play around that. The fact that the damage is piercing also gives it the extra edge against red or green opponents since they can play around it by utilizing armor. He may not be the strongest since there are 3 heroes better than him in this list, but he sure is the smarterest. Taking the bronze at number 3 is Kana, and boy, she was not easy to rank. Depending who you ask, this might easily be number 1 on that person's list, and I was on the verge of putting her there myself, but there is of course a reason I didn't. Sure, her stats are amazing and give her staying power that other blue heroes can only dream of, and her signature card is also potentially game winning when at worst, and without any setup, you most of the time get a quasi-dimensional portal, which is already insane. And at best, when for example combining it with our number 4 boy, Ogre Magi's Ignite, can single-handedly overrun your opponent and win the lane in the blink of an eye. So with all the potential, why only number 3? The reason for that is her passive, and that passive is a blessing and a curse. The fact that all your melee creeps spawn in the same lane as Kana can allow you to win whatever lane she is in, even without the help of additional heroes. However, the downside is that you won't be getting any natural melee creeps in your other 2 lanes as long as she lives, often forcing your other heroes to fight an uphill battle in those lanes, which all too often they can't win. Therefore it is essential to make every card you play in your non-Kana lanes count, since most likely your opponents will be able to win the other 2 lanes before you can push down the Ancient in that Kana lane. When playing Kana, it is very important to also teleport her out of the lane once you are certain you won it. So you can use her to stabilize or win another one of your lanes, and let the creeps that got deployed already do the rest for you. Also, it is recommended to deploy Kana on turn 2, so you can put her in the first lane, which is of course the most important lane in case you are going for an Ancient push. A very skill testing hero indeed, and as said before, can easily be ranked higher than this if you play her properly, that is. Number 2 is Zeus. His passive might not seem like much, but depending on how many cheap spells you have, and especially when having access to cunning plans, you can often do a lot of fancy tricks with that and clean up a bunch of things in the process. But we all know the main reason we want to play Zeus, and that's of course his impressive signature card, Thunder God's Wrath. Being able to set up Thunder God's Wrath to hit or preferably kill as many enemy heroes as soon as turn 4 is often game deciding. Imagine having the initiative and you cast Thunder God's Wrath that kills all your enemy heroes that you carefully set to low health before that. Not only does that mean that your opponent basically skips his entire turn, but also doesn't have access to those heroes you just killed on the following turn either. We already know how great upkeep kills are, and this is the ultimate potential upkeep kill. Of course, Zeus has some weaknesses too, because sometimes the enemy heroes are too tanky and barely get phased by 1 or even 2 Thunder God's Wraths, so obviously he works best against squishy blue or black heroes. And yeah, since it only hits heroes, he has a harder time clearing creeps than other entries in this list, but the sheer game winning potential Zeus' signature card has is enough to secure him the number 2 spot. And taking the crown at number 1 is Luna. Luna has the same stats as Jimui, which I already mentioned are really good considering it's a blue hero, so obviously that applies to Luna as well. But unlike every other blue hero on this list, not only thanks to her stats, but even more so because of her passive, you are encouraged to deploy her on turn 1, since you want to start collecting these Eclipse charges as soon as possible. On average, once you can play Eclipse on 6 mana, you will have 4, sometimes even 5 charges being able to already do some serious damage on mid-sized boards. Kind of like Skywrath Mage's Mystic Flare would on 6 mana, except you change his reliability for her piercing damage. Now this doesn't sound all that exciting at first, but of course, the longer the game goes, and of course it is in the nature of blue decks to try and drag out games as long as possible, the better Eclipse becomes, eventually becoming so devastating that it can turn an unconditional one-side annihilation. Or when you know nothing else helps, you just have to put your faith in RNGesus and hope for the best. And that's my list. If you want to see more lists like this, make sure to subscribe for upcoming content and check my other videos. If you want to see me put all these words to good use as well, you can just check out my Twitch channel, link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!